I want to welcome our panel from the Frontend Friday Feud. Our panelists are going to be going head to head. They're going to be debating the merits of assorted CSS concepts like Flexbox versus Grid, various CSS frameworks, and more. So they are going to chat through these things. Feel free to put things in the chat as well. We can make sure that they're watching that. This is going to be a really interactive and fun panel. And our panel features, we have our host, Kirk Shillingford, who is a full stack developer interested in functional programming. Then we have Nick Taylor. We met him earlier today, who's a developer advocate at Pomerium. Dan Ott, who we also met, a developer and designer with Sprockets. Meg Gutshall, a Ruby on Rails developer at Penn Medicine, who also spoke earlier, and Jörn Bernhardt, who's been building web applications for over 2 decades. Thank you all so much for being here. Really looking forward to this.
All right, well, let's get started. As Becca said so wonderfully, my name is Kirk. I am going to be doing my very best to keep these 4 people just somewhat in line for the next hour as we dive into all things front end. I wanted to make sure I started this off with saying that I think between these 4 folks here, there's like, I don't know, over 50 years of web dev experience. I say that both to make them feel old, but also to share with you all how much wisdom they possess. In sort of like an opposite of a Ron Swanson quote, they know more than me. Everybody here knows more than me when it comes to these things. So my goal is to just gently steer the conversation. We're going to try and do this old school style. So high school debate. We're going to have a bunch of topics lined up, but I'm going to encourage folks in the chat. If you have topics in mind, I'm going to do my best to sort of like check. And if there's something there and the panelists think it's interesting, we might dive into that as well. So we have some topics lined up. We're going to start with 2 panelists at first. Each one of them has about 2 minutes to kind of give their opening statements. Then we'll do a quick 30 seconds for rebuttal on either side. And then we open it up to the general panel. And we're going to see how much, how does Nick say it? How much structured YOLO we can accomplish in the time. But I just want to say welcome to everybody again. Thank you so much to our panelists for being here. Let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. First topic, CSS methodologies. I want to preface this by saying that when we were discussing this panel, so much time was devoted to figuring out how to define this problem. There was a pre-debate about the debate topic. So I'm sure this will be super easy for everyone to deal with. But first topic is we're going to look at styles of CSS framework systems. We have Meg representing our class component style, our Bootstrap style, our, hey, there's a thing, there's a class for the thing, and you put the name and then you get all the features. It's great. It works. We've been doing it forever. And on the other side of things, we have Jörn and his new school, new age, hippity-dippity ideas about these little small atomic functions like Tailwind. Oh, it just does one thing at a time. I don't even know what that means. So we're going to give them a chance to jump in. I'm going to start with Meg. I have my own little timer here so I can see if they're yapping too much. I will let them know when they're yapping too much. And we'll switch sides and it should be a good time.
I was born ready, Kirk.
I love that energy. Meg, you got 2 minutes. Go.
All right. So, as Kirk already mentioned, component classes, they encapsulate the declarations required style and element within the context of one component. Everything is encapsulated. It separates concerns. You have your CSS in a style sheet. It's away from the HTML because having all that stuff in HTML, it gets messy. Code is confusing enough as it is. Why do you need that in there, right? You can go in and easily tweak things using like your variables and do it globally. There's less decision-making responsibility when it comes to actually writing out the HTML. and you have more consistency across your styles. Utility classes, they can lead to inconsistency because you have to remember to add this to every single thing you're putting in. And Bootstrap, it's just easy. It's just there. You have button class, okay, putting that in there, and all the style comes with it. And you know, it handles media queries just so nicely. You don't have to make all these different utility classes to
20
handle
seconds left.
stuff. Uh, it's it's just Bootstrap was my first love. I'm never gonna give it up. I'm sorry, Jörn. You're never gonna take it away from me. That's all there is to it.
And time. Meg ending with the never gonna give you up, never gonna let us down, Rickroll to just close that
Bootstrap
out.
never does.
That was a really nice opening salvo. Let's see if Jörn is ready to defend. She's selling me on pure nostalgia. There's a warmth in my heart when I think about it. So let's see what you can do. Jörn, your time starts now.
Okay, so let's talk about Tailwind and these atomic CSS classes. I learned the term atomic, by the way, today. I don't really like the vocabulary style. I tend to like the thing, like you describe things. You just say like, it looks like this, it does like this, something. I don't need to name some component with an arbitrary name all the time. And I don't really need to do that because I know what I need to do in order to get this component to look like I want it to look. And why should I need this extra name of this component thing that works maybe well for this one side, but not for the other one? So I tend to like just write the rules, what I need in the thing that I'm working on. I also think that once I lose one of these components, these classes, these bigger, larger classes, I just tend to forget them if I use something like Bootstrap. And with Tailwind and these build scripts, basically for these CSS classes, you don't really need to care about this anymore because it will just not be there if you don't need it. And it will just be added once you do.
30 seconds.
And yeah, so I think also it feels a little bit more like the React kind of way. You put everything together where it belongs and just think about it logically and not arbitrary. Like, okay, you have your style sheet somewhere and then your view somewhere and then your logic somewhere else. No, you put it all in its own little domain and you keep everything in this same thing. I kind of like this more because I can delete stuff with one click, basically, if I don't need it anymore.
Time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interesting thoughts, interesting bounce backs. I personally feel like this is still pretty even for me. I represent a reader. I don't know anything about this. I just want my website to work and look good. I have a boss who's asking for way too much. They don't know what web development is. Just want to know what to do. Meg, I am going to give you a quick 30-second rebuttal and to let everybody know, Meg's going to get 30 seconds, you're going to get 30 seconds again, and then the whole panel gets to weigh in. All right, and Meg, go. Tear them down.
Yeah, Jörn, newsflash, not everybody uses React, okay? So get with that, first off. Second, utility frameworks are people that hate CSS. Let's just admit it, all right? They're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. Let's just put all this into the HTML.
10 seconds.
It's just it's hard to look at an HTML file with all that in there. Putting in components just makes things cleaner. It's the coding experience is just so much better.
And time. All right. Same 30 seconds up on the clock. Some shots were fired there. Jörn, go.
So I'm using the rules directly, so that means I have to know a lot more about the CSS stuff that I'm doing there, because I need to know what to find. So instead of hating CSS, it's probably more about the other people just don't know how to do CSS, and they just need some component that someone else wrote for them, so they can just reuse it again. So I really don't get that. And to be honest, with the if you're not using a component-based thing, I think you're missing out a lot of stuff. So if you started with some other
Time.
templating stuff, no,
Time.
old school.
I'm gonna call it right there. That was really funny. I like the part where you guys don't know how to stop. Okay, so everybody said their opening statements. Meg jumped in, Jörn jumped in. The chat seems to be really liking the conflict portion of this. It seems to be a strong theme today. So we're going to make this more chaotic, and we're now going to open it up to our two silent folks so far. Dan and Nick, two people who famously have never had strong opinions about anything at all. Either one of you can jump in.
I strongly disagree with that comment.
And I would also like to strongly disagree with Nick's strongly disagreed statement. So just so everybody knows where I stand.
Exactly.
There. Now that's all clear. Yeah.
All right, so let's start with Nick. What's your take on the situation? Where do you, maybe it's good to know like where you were recently, have you changed your mind? What do you think is the way that you probably default to now the most?
Yeah, I think component-based is the way to go, but and that can be handled in many, and I don't mean Bootstrap. I just mean like that could be scope styles within a single file component, or you're using some other framework. But at the same time, you do want to have some global styles. Like I worked in a code base where like all the links were getting set style wise, which made no sense to me. So like you had global styling. I changed it to global styling for some stuff that makes sense, like headings and so on. And then in the component, if ever you did have to override that, you could, but like you're kind of breaking the design system if you're like all of a sudden changing all the standard links styling to something else. But there are reasons to have different looks for the styles sometimes, but I think it's basically a mix. You have a good foundation of base styles, because if you're using something like Tailwind, they basically just delete all styling with the base stuff. So, you know, it's not because I'm undecided. I think the good mix there is you have some sensible defaults, and then you go at the component base level for maximum reuse.
You know, Nick, everything you just said seems sort of like thoughtful and practical and reasonable. I don't know if I'm here for that. So let's jump to
Ready.
Dan and let's see what Dan has to say.
I would like to
Wild
categorically
card in
disagree with
here.
everything that Nick said. Yeah, no. I have become a huge fan of Tailwind, and I would like to say two things. First, I think that Meg, if we were going to base this before any of us, before the rabble took over, I think that Meg won this debate personally. I feel like Meg did a really good job. Jörn was you tried your best, you know what I mean? However, I
Oh,
disagree
I
with
liked you,
Nick.
Dan.
So, yeah, I mean, like my thing with Tailwind, first of all, I love Tailwind, and I also love CSS. And the people who built Tailwind know more about CSS than I will ever know ever in my life. If you look at the styles that Tailwind generates, you think when we think of utility classes like that, you think like, oh, like M-10 is, sets a margin or whatever. And like, yes, that's true. But they have so many classes that do so many different things, and they all work together, right? And that's like one of the coolest parts. I do think component, like building things with components in mind is the right way to go. I think probably we can all agree with that. Like, not component classes, right? But the idea of a component as a self-contained thing, right? And putting your using Tailwind classes like that and putting them in the components themselves lets them be transportable, lets them you can drop it into
10
another
seconds
site that
left.
if you Tailwind. Wait, this part's getting timed?
Yes, we have to go to other
What?
topics. We can't chat
All
about
right,
this
whatever.
forever.
Tailwind is the best. I'm awesome. Let's go. Hey, we're back.
Hey,
Nick was just saying how much that he agreed with everything that I said. So
yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely what happened. So if you're wondering what just happened, I personally think Dan talked so much trash that the stream broke down. But we're back. And let's see. Let's do like a quick, so I think like we were actually in the middle of like a nuanced and wonderful discussion between industry professionals. So I'm gonna give Nick a chance to kind of reiterate what he said because it was very good. I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, so like I said, I definitely think it's sensible to have some base style defaults for things. And just because like Dan said, he's a big fan of Tailwind, I am too, and I'm a big fan of CSS. And what I meant is, in a component, you can definitely go scope styles if your framework supports that. But if you're building out the component styling, like definitely utility classes in there, maybe minimal inline, but I don't think you need that. It's like Tailwind does so much, like Dan was saying, like they really know CSS, like, and it always boggles my mind when people say they hate Tailwind CSS, but they're like CSS lovers, because like, anyways, they're
yeah,
both
I mean,
good.
if you're into CSS, sometime you should just check out the stuff that they're doing. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
Especially the new version with they're leaning really hard on CSS variables and things like that. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Even if you're not planning on using Tailwind, I think you would learn a lot just like looking at the stuff they're doing. It's cool.
I
Yeah,
think
and
that's
I wanted to
go
add,
for it, Meg.
Oh, here we go.
yeah, I wanted to add, Nick actually showed me years back this Daisy UI, and
Oh yeah.
it's component based using Tailwind utility classes. So it's when I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like Tailwind and Bootstrap had a baby. Uh, that's like what the first thing that came to me. And so I think that's pretty cool. I used it in one project before, and it's really neat because it does have components, and then you can use Tailwind utility classes on top of those to make little tweaks here and there wherever you need to. Um, so just mixing and matching is a really interesting idea as well.
Thanks, Meg. And I think on that lovely note, we can probably wrap up this topic for a little bit. Someone in the chat wrote Bootwind. and someone else said Tailstrap, and those are both terrible ideas. We're not going to do either of that. But I think probably a general place to end on here, sort of extending what Dan said, which is you should check out things even if you're probably not going to use them, even if you probably don't like it or if it's not your style. There's a lot of things I've learned from languages, systems, and frameworks that I don't even necessarily like. But sometimes just like seeing another way of thinking of things can make things make more sense for you. All right, enough nice stuff. We're going back to the next topic. This time, and my panelists will let me know if I've messed this up, I believe we have Meg up again, but this time against Dan. Our topic, learning the fundamentals, a word that people say a lot, and I don't know what it means. Meg is going to be on the side of tradition, family values, CSS families, of course. And hey, you know, like you got to learn the basics. You got to start from the beginning. Dan is going to come in from the perspective of, I don't know, the future. I don't know what he's going to talk about. I don't know what he's going to say. It's probably going to be cool. But let's get started. And I think this time, to make sure Meg gets a little reprieve, we are going to start with Dan. So, same rules as before.
Starting with me.
Starting with you. You're going to get 2 minutes on the clock.
Before beauty.
All right.
2
It was
minutes on the clock.
All of my arguments are based on being second, but that's fine. I'm adaptable.
I
Like
can go
Tailwind.
first if you want.
No, I think Dan should go first. I think this is better. We got to keep him on our toes. All right, Dan, you've got 2 minutes to convince us why fundamentals are not the thing we need right now. Go for it.
Okay, I think we've all had enough of fundamentalism. I would like to see it get out of my face. My biggest issue with the idea of learning the fundamentals, and listen, my opponent is going to say that they're very important, and anybody who considers themselves, you know, well-versed in something needs to know the fundamentals. And while I agree with that, there are many steps to get to the well-versed point, right? And the idea that you need to learn a whole bunch of, you know, let's be honest, really boring stuff, you know, before you can do anything fun is a form of gatekeeping, and I am not here for it. I would like the gates to be open to everybody. And on a little bit slightly more serious note, I think that if you are interested in doing a thing, just dive in and do it. You know what I mean? Go for it. Learn, like you'll pick the rest of the stuff up later. I think learning the fundamentals is probably a good idea eventually. But this isn't sports where you need to like have perfect form when you start or you'll be ruined forever, right? This is coding where you can always learn. I still learn. If you saw my talk earlier, you saw that I've been doing this for a very long time and I learn things pretty much every day and I'm still learning. And so there's never like a point where you can where you're like are going to get to a point and then you can't learn anything more, right? And so I think my basic statement is gatekeeping is bad, fundamentalism is bad, and doing exciting and fun things because it's fun and exciting is good. Fun is good, and I yield my time.
And I yield my time. Look at you. Taking
My entire goal for this whole
taking
thing
my job away from me.
My entire goal for this whole thing was to get to a point where I could say I yield my time.
There you go.
Goal accomplished.
Let me reset this handy dandy timer. Strong opener from Dan, making some, I think, really good points there. Dan says dive right in. I think Dan also said front end development is boring. I don't know what that was about, but he definitely said that. And we're going to jump straight to Meg and not give him a chance to defend himself. Meg, you've got 2 minutes. Go.
What am I eating? What am I eating? It's called Dev Soup. And Mika told me about that earlier today. Maybe you guys know about that. That's all you're going to get from these modern solutions, div soup, because they put divs everywhere. Div in here, and we're going to add a little class here. You know what that is? That's not good semantic code. That's why you need to learn the basics of HTML and CSS. You want to put divs all through your code, that's okay. It'll get the job done, But a lot of these modern frameworks don't build accessibility into their frameworks. That's like an afterthought. They'll get to it and they'll do their best. Accessibility is very important. We saw so many talks about that earlier today. Also, a lot of times you need to build your own custom solutions for custom problems. How are you going to do that on a modern solution just spinning up some sort of framework? You know, if you know these basics, you'll be able to dig deeper in there or write code on top of whatever you're using to get customized
30
code and
seconds.
solutions. There's a lot of HTML elements that people don't know about because they're just so used to using the typical stuff. But if you dig deeper, like just last year, I did a deep study and learned a lot of stuff. So you don't have to learn it before starting, but it's something important to learn. Yield
Exactly
my time.
2 minutes. Wow,
There was
wow,
no extra time to
wow.
yield. Don't try to steal my line.
What is the smallest unit of time that can be yielded? A microsecond? Who knows? No, those are both great. All right, so we're gonna do our quick, am I right? 30, you have 30 seconds. I'm holding you guys this one. 30 seconds rebuttal, Dan, then back to Meg. Then I feel like Jörn is bursting at the seams with thoughts, and he's just waiting for his time. So let's not keep him waiting too long. Dan, go.
Okay, first of all, I would like to protest the treatment from the moderators in this panel. I feel like I'm being unfairly, like, I don't know what the word is, but like it's bad. Second of all, soup is delicious. Okay, so I eat soup all the time. It's always good. There's nothing wrong with soup. Third of all, I would say that the components, if you're trying to get through something big and fast, you can find components that solve a lot of the accessibility issues that are around right away. Nick put in a comment about like div role button area label, but like that's not the kind of thing that people do, off the bat. I'm just saying use some components. Use Bootstrap if you want. That's good. Bootstrap is fine. You don't need to know everything that Bootstrap is doing to use Bootstrap. Okay, I yield my time. I'm done.
Thank you. Oh man, I got distracted by chat and I didn't see the
I did
time.
too. I
Okay.
went way over. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. I will
I thought it
afford
was a minute for a
Meg
second. Yeah, my
the
bad.
same amount of time. We'll keep it fair. Meg, you have the same
It
extra
was like a minute.
time that Dan stole from everyone else that I didn't remind him about. Go.
Okay. So let me just tell you about some cool stuff that you can use with HTML. Did you know with ordered lists, you can use reversed, type that in, and it'll reverse the numbering order. You can also add in start and tell it what number to start at, type, and say either numerals, letters, Roman numerals, and there's a ton of other stuff. For a link, you can put download after the href. So if you are linking to a PDF, when they click on it, it just downloads it right off the
All
bat.
right. That is time. About a soup-based debate in the chat. I feel like some people have kind of deviated away from our original topic, but that's okay. And I'm going to open it up to the rest of the panel. I think this time we'll start with Jörn, who has just been typing these questions in the panelist chat, like, but what about this? So
It's
Jörn,
all
go
trash
for
talk
it.
in the panel. All trash talk in the panel. Yeah, mute. Jörn.
Yeah, I was just thinking when Meg was talking about the div soup, she never heard about fragments in these components frameworks, basically. So where you can get rid of these things. You can still do all the fundamentals in there if you want to, but you don't have to. You can just take whatever you like, and you have so many options, so many different options that you can choose from. You can ask ChatGPT for this or for that. There are lots of things that you can use. So I'm just thinking maybe if you know the fundamentals. Yeah.
I'm going to end it on Jörn says, don't learn any fundamentals, only hyperbole, no nuance. Nick, go for it.
Yeah. I hate that I hate that I'm the only one that isn't able to be fake angry here, but but and this sounds like what you said at the beginning, that I have no strong opinions, but it's not true. It's like I don't think it matters if you learn fundamentals first or if you just jump into a framework. I think you should just build, and you're gonna like, say you start off with the framework. At some point you're gonna be like, I have no idea how this CSS feature works, or I don't know how this thing in the framework works. And then you're going to have to dig into that. So you're going to have to go and figure out some fundamentals. Or if you come from the fundamentals side, you might know all the fundamentals, but you have no idea how the framework works. So you go through a few things, but you're going to have to dig in there too. So it's like, I just think, really, I think the most important thing, in all seriousness, is just build something, because there's a lot of people that get like dev paralysis, or like, people always talking about, like, oh, I should work on this project or whatever. And yeah, I really wish I could be fake angry, but I just want people to build stuff, because like, you're just gonna learn so much from doing that, and you're gonna pick up the other stuff along the way. Like, I started learning fundamentals, but only because I'm old. So like, I used to do like CSS and JavaScript and like literal pirated Windows 2000 Pro Notepad.exe. But like, if I was starting today, I would probably have jumped into React initially, probably, So I don't know, just learn. And I really need to work on my fake angry. I'm sorry. I've failed you all in the YouTube chat.
I really wanted a gavel, but here we are. I feel like Nick said, maybe the real CSS fundamentals is the frameworks we picked up along the way.
Exactly.
Can we fire Kirk?
No, I can fire you. It doesn't work the other way around. Nope, but as always, I think we sort of like come to a nice place here. Spoiler alert, everyone, all these things are it depends. But no, it's worth it wherever I think starting wherever you'd like is probably more important than what you start with. But just like find a way to not stay in that same place forever. Because we met those people, they're on Reddit, and we want to be better than that. All right, so we have been asking, I know Meg said in the chat, we'll remind folks, if there's any topics you want us to jump into, you can throw them in the chat, and if you have time, we're going to pick them up. I've seen multiple people ask for pixels versus EM units versus REM units, which is an interesting one. I'm wondering if anybody here has some strong opinions about those.
Oh, I do.
I know you do, Dan. I was giving the others a chance. I know that you do. So maybe let's do like a quick kind of, since this one came from the chat, we'll do this in a sort of like lightning fashion. So won't do the standard debate style. If anybody has any thoughts here, chime in, and we'll do it for the next couple of minutes or so before we get back to one of our other main topics.
Linda's getting, I mean, I'm sorry, Linda just in the chat just got me totally off topic, because she said, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh no, that one.
The answer is no.
I will fight all of you.
Oh gosh.
It
I tried so
definitely does. Along with bacon.
Bacon, yes. Pineapple,
Pineapple and bacon.
I don't need wet puddles on my pizza. That's it. I yield my time.
Drain the pineapple first, dummy.
Wet puddles.
man.
Watch me make a bunch of enemies right now. I don't think there should ever be chicken on pizza.
I think
I think
Nick's
it's
having a
bad.
seizure.
Oh, I was on mute. I was just saying I could literally eat a whole pack of bacon and not feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
Put
Canadian
bacon on
in you.
everything.
Yeah.
It's so good. Well, I'm
It
basically
revoke your
fueled by
citizenship
bacon
if
and
not.
maple syrup. Sometimes you got to tap into the reserve, but
Yeah, Linda
you know.
and I are going out for pizza after this. So.
Okay.
There's some coalitions forming between like people in chat and people on the panel. There's a lot happening here.
I don't know. Stuff got real, man.
Okay,
Got real.
we
Sweet and
cannot
savory.
get into this. Cannot get into pizza because then this stream will last forever. Okay, so before we jump in, I do want to actually ask, does anyone have any thoughts on the pixels rem m thoughts? They don't necessarily have to be
Yeah.
antagonistic, just what do
Yeah.
you think?
Let Dan go, and I have thoughts too, but I have a feeling I align with a lot of what Dan probably is going to say.
I mean, my real answer, my what's the word?
Fighty.
Antagonistic. My non-fighty answer is it depends. And like there's M's and REMs is are very similar, right? They're relative units. And the usage of the reason why we use things like that is because things like Zoom, it's an accessibility issue, right? So things like Zoom and things like that work differently when you use relative units versus absolute units, which you could get into pixels, or centimeters, which is a valid CSS unit of measurement. There's a lot of wild CSS number values. The inches is also there. None of them are real, right? Like you could never take a ruler and put it up on your screen. It will never be the same, right? Because screens are all different, all that stuff. The reason to use relative units is because so they're relative to, so M's are relative to their direct parent, and REMs, the R stands for root, so that's relative to the HTML object, the HTML element all the way at the top. And they scale much easier for people who use Zoom or things like that. So I tend to use a mix, honestly, and things that deal with text, I will always use one of the two, like rems or M's, and then things that don't use text, I will usually use pixels because that's fine. That's my quick answer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was under 30 seconds, but
It wasn't. It definitely wasn't, but that's okay. I think
I have no
Nick,
idea how time works. I don't.
you don't know how units work. You don't know
I'm
how
sorry.
time works. It's okay. We'll do Nick and then Meg, and then Jörn will close us off.
Yeah, it's pretty much what Dan said. Like, and I remember reading a post from Josh Como, who's also from Montreal representing. You know, people used to say like pixels were bad for accessibility, and it's not the case. Like there are certain scenarios, I think, but it is a really depends. Like, and I typically use rem a lot. I don't know. I could use M within like the container, but I typically haven't. I've mainly stuck to M, but rem, sorry. But I don't know. It depends. Like it really depends what you want the inside of that container to do. Like if you really want everything within it to grow according to its container, then an M in there for things is good. But if you don't, then I would just stick to rem. And I don't know, centimeters are cool because Canada.
Thanks, Nick, for never missing the opportunity to plug the System International.
Yeah. De rien, de
Metric
rien.
system.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Europe's in the chat. Here we go.
Europe has entered the chat.
Man, save us from ourselves.
The post that Nick referred to, I recently read and I put it in the chat because I found out I was doing it all wrong. Yeah, I pretty much use rem for everything. And then I read that post and was like, huh, I guess that I should use pixels and M for some things because, again, accessibility. people zoom things, and when you zoom with relative M's, some things get huge, and that's not a good user experience. I'm one of those people who zooms my browser, but I only do it like to 110 or 120%, so I don't notice that much, but people who zoom a lot, it will compound a lot. So I definitely recommend reading that article I posted in the chat. It's there, Joe. Look up.
Look, Joe, look.
I don't see it as well.
You know, maybe giving you speakers access to the chat was a mistake. All right, Jörn, you're going to close this out, and I think we got time for one more topic. So what do you think?
Okay, so to be honest, I also use every unit, but I do love gradients. Here it is. I said it. I somehow hit it whenever we did the CSS battle stuff. Somehow, I don't think that anybody noticed that I like gradients. Yeah, but you can do pixel art with gradients. So whenever you use pixels, it feels to me like these old school retro games where you had just a couple of pixels on the screen. In the end, you always like put pixels on the screen. You're not. So I just like them more, I think, even though I tend to use the other stuff as well, I have to admit.
You seem so sad about the fact. Everyone else is like, there's a time and a place, there's some really good resources, check them out. And you're just like, but I kind of like these more though. So I won't do that. And honestly, that's pretty fair. But no, like everyone said, it's worth checking these things. I feel like the big takeaway for this one is just like, there's nuances to all of them. I think my experience with CSS is being very confused at first, and then being very confused later with realizing like, I'm not confused because it doesn't make sense. I'm confused because like some very smart people had some very specific reasons for everything that they've done. Like CSS is sort of like a living history of a bunch of people trying to make doing things on the web work. So sometimes you might not think there's a purpose for something, but there usually is. Thank you for, I think it was Joe and Ayu who would both recommended that in the chat. Got a good discussion out of it. Really appreciate it. So I think we have time. Well, we'll see. But we're going to try and get one more topic in. This one is really about sort of like the systems, what I call the systems du jour of the front-end world right now. If you are in front-end land, you probably know about something called Next.js. And if you've been in this space for some time, you also know that in the last 5 years, we've had several iterations of what is the cool thing that the cool kids are doing. We've had the rise and fall of things like Remix. You can go back all the way to jQuery. Like there's always something new and interesting happening in the world of front end, especially when it comes to just like what are the big systems and frameworks that people are building around. So I think we're going to do a topic here where we have our panelists sort of give their 2 cents on how they feel about the current major frameworks. And we are not gonna live in a JavaScript-centric land here. So I'm opening like the Django's of the world, the Rails of the world, the things that are actually powering the internet, the PHPs of the world, the things that are actually powering everything. Jörn's making a bunch of faces, throwing them all in there. And I think for this last one, we will get, I think, a statement from all 4 of our panelists. So let's start with, who hasn't gone first? Nick, I think let's start with you. I'm going to give you a minute and you can talk about what maybe your favorite framework is, what framework you might think, well, I don't know if people should get into this. Like, how do you feel about the current landscape? Should we stick to what we have? Just full thoughts on the topic. Let's kind of dive in.
Cool. For some context, I used to work on the frameworks team at Netlify. Worked with a lot of the frameworks. The ones that I enjoy right now are Astro. And even though it's not officially 1.0, TanStack Start is looking really promising. If you haven't used anything TanStack, everything they do on the TanStack team, Tanner and all the maintainers, it's pretty amazing. And it's just, I think, at least if we're talking about React ecosystem, I think things got really complicated, you know, and I just find something like TanStack refreshing. Doesn't really hurt my brain. You know, Next.js is great and super powerful, but you know, and I'm not saying this because I worked at Netlify, but there's just some stuff that I feel is missing out of it in terms of like, there's the caching in Next.js throws people off a lot. You can't really access stuff within the request like headers and so on, or cookies, and like most of the other frameworks you can. This is a decision and it's totally fine. It's just, you just have to know these things is all. And that said, Next.js is still a really good framework, but for me, my two favorites right now are Astro and TanStack Start. I'll just say one last thing. I got to hang with Josh Sear from the Laravel crew, and the stuff with Bolt and all the stuff they have going on with Laravel is pretty exciting too, though, even if it's not full stack JavaScript.
Thanks, Nick. Good. I think we're gonna call that our good opener. And let's jump over next to Dan, and let's see what Dan has to say, or where he's going to be leaning on the Next.js or no side of things.
Okay, yeah. First of all, I was told that I would get to argue against things in this panel all the time, and now I'm being forced to just argue for something without.
And the unexpected positivity is the worst.
I think you should argue against our moderator forcing you to do this.
Well,
yeah.
overruled. I'm also the judge. Oops. Continue.
Lawyered. Yeah, I think I am pretty much all in on Next.js for sites that reach some level of complexity and or interactivity. I don't think Next.js is the best choice for I don't know, I guess traditional websites, you know, like documents basically. But once you start interacting with people and, you know, having to receive input, and, you know, and give feedback, things like that, the things that Next.js unlocks, especially in the last couple of years with server components, really makes life, I don't know, 7 billion times easier. Anybody who's dealt with React and disliked having to understand how hooks work, right? You can make an entire interactive Next.js site that doesn't use hooks at all. Like that's because a lot of it happens on the server now, which is really dope. And that's the key that a lot of the, you know, up until the last couple of years, most of the front end frameworks focused on taking a bunch of input and then building out a static site. And so the value of that, the static site, is there's no server side at all. It's already just on the server. So it's going to be incredibly fast every time. But the applications that gets all the attention are things where people, you know, send things in and then also receive things back, like Twitter or, you know, I mean, Zoom or whatever, you know, things like that, where there's lots of back and forth. And in that situation, you need to do a lot of like silly negotiation if you're doing everything on the front end and the back end is completely separate. If you use a server-side component framework like Next.js or Remix, or there's probably other ones, you get it all together on one component. I yield the rest of my time.
I know you think so. Okay. No, I think really strong arguments there for Next.js, and a really like nice explanation of why it can be a good idea. Wait, Nick, Did you mute yourself again?
Oh, I was just trash talking, but I was on mute. The one time I trash talk and I'm muted.
You're really not cut out for this. You
Yeah.
can't.
God
It's
damn
not
it.
gonna work. Okay, so let's have maybe Jörn chime in with, he's been saying basically no frameworks, don't use any of this, sets front end free again in the chat this entire time. So we'll give him some time, and maybe like Meg is gonna be the responsible one to close us off with like the other frameworks that are out there. Jörn, go for it.
No, I just wrote that for Dan, so he has something to argue against all the frameworks,
I
basically.
appreciate that.
But I have started without any frameworks, built my own build tools and things like this. So trying to get the most out of your HTML. Basically, you want to click something and you don't want to have a full page reload whenever you go on the next page on your application or on your site. So you just want to like download the stuff that you need. And getting to this point is pretty hard, actually, or was pretty hard. And nowadays it's getting better. But the approach that, for example, React took was way too complicated. And they put up like multiple layers on top of it, so it got more complex and more complicated. And I really didn't like that at all. So I looked into different frameworks as well. I think Astro does it really well, but I tried out SvelteKit before
There
that,
it is.
and I need to just say that SvelteKit is the first thing that made me feel like, okay, I can build the stuff that I want in a way that it gives me like a performant and nice end result, basically. And at the same time, I can be very, very productive with it. So I think a lot of people just quit researching new frameworks whenever they
15
found
seconds
something
left.
that made them productive. So I hope I haven't reached that yet, but SvelteKit is just great.
Thanks, Jörn. And I think, okay, so we've had two people mention Astro. Nick dived into some of his favorite systems. Dan made a strong point for Next.js. Jörn basically said everything that Dan said was wrong. And I think our last presenter, Meg, is going to come in with some nuanced takes that might fall under the, you don't even have to use JavaScript, man. Meg, go for it.
Yeah, I'm coming in from left field as usual. You're talking to the Ruby on Rails developer here. And yes, we do use JavaScript still. Stimulus, if you haven't heard of it, it's pretty cool. Stimulus is part of the Hotwire ecosystem, and Hotwire isn't specifically Rails. If you mess around with Elixir, you probably heard of this too. It's Stimulus is like the most Railsy JavaScript framework. They have controllers that you set up. So it's just structured in a very Rails way. And it makes me happy as a Rails developer because I have learned React and Redux. I learned React before hooks, and passing props and stuff. No. Yeah, Stimulus makes a lot more sense to me using it in the ecosystem that I work in, but also something like a little more everybody else's speed. I am a big fan of Alpine JS. It's very, very lightweight. It is reminiscent of jQuery, only
I feel like it's reminiscent of Tailwind, except for JavaScript.
yeah. So yeah, look at me being just like totally contradicting myself. But it's reminiscent of jQuery, but not a pain in the ass, which jQuery is very much pain in my ass. So yeah,
I
check this
think
out.
we can all agree on that point there. jQuery is a massive.
I disagree strongly.
I
Yeah.
know you disagree strongly,
I will
Dan.
fight you. I will drive to Ohio and smack you down over this.
What's hard about
Fortunately,
jQuery though?
We have
I just
5 minutes left
I
before
had to
one of you
deal
commits a felony.
with
Uh,
an issue with jQuery that took a big
Oh.
chunk of my life at work. So
Oh, you got issues. Okay. There.
yeah.
I'm trying to
It's
trash talk. Trying to
personal.
trash talk.
It's personal.
So what have we learned today? Dan will argue with anyone over anything all the time. Nick cannot argue at all, and it's a wonder how he's made it so far without any conflict resolution skill. And Jörn likes 3 specific things very, very much and doesn't like anything else. Meg just contradicts herself all the time. No, we have a couple of minutes left, and I want to say a few things here. I want to say, first of all, thank you to the panelists for such a wonderful job. Thank you for the enthusiasm. Thank you for the energy. Whether it was angry energy or not, it was very much appreciated. As we said somewhere through this, that yeah, the kind of the point of all this is there's a lot of stuff out there and nobody has all the answers, and it's never too late to find something new that you like or to find something new that you don't like, but you learn something from it. I have so much respect for all these people here, and I know they're all doing amazing work with the tools that they are using. And you know, it's about the people, not the tools. But if you find the right tool for you, that is also a really good thing too. And if you don't, there's probably something else out there. And as long
Can I trash
as
talk? Can I interrupt you for a trash talk?
Yeah,
Yes.
one trash talk.
And some people are tools. There you go.
Okay,
There you go.
Taylor.
Boom.
Okay, he's from Quebec, folks. He's from Quebec. All right. But yes, thank you to everybody
A very
who came
Canadian
in.
trash talk.
Thank you for the folks in the chat for honestly providing me with a ton of entertainment. I feel like Linda in the chat deserves her own TV show. Linda is the funniest person I've ever seen. But yes, so I feel
Also,
like this.
Kirk, thank you for moderating and letting us abuse you.
Yeah, he was mid. He was mid.
It's my lot in life, as I spent the entire day avoiding conversations about Kirk Day, and I will continue to do so. Do not at me. But yeah,
we have a little celebration in the co-working
Everybody
room
at
after
Kirk.
this
Yeah.
with the Kirk Day stuff.
I don't know anything about that. So we just want to encourage everybody as we sort of like wind down. I think the big theme here has been just like try new things, give it a shot. You don't need to find a fancy framework. You can do it your own style and just like go with what you know. You can learn things along the way. You can always jump back. There's no rules here except just keep trying to figure things out. And if you get stuck, you know, ask your friends for help. All these people here, I at some point have asked for help with something, and they've given me great advice or terrible advice, but like we did it together, and that's what matters. So I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful I had a chance to like be on this panel and do this thing with my friends, because everybody here is my friend. And that's my favorite part of front end development. My friends would do front end development. The end.
Thank you.
Yeah, see y'all soon.
Well, later, everybody.